Tied to this phenomenon is the human need for acceptance, often compelling individuals to mold their characteristics to align with the influencing group, thereby creating either positive or negative effect. Regardless of whether the affiliation to a social group is formal, like political parties or schools, or informal, like cliques, peer pressure remains a potent force. Presence alone in a collective setting can provoke its impact. Institutions are also not exempt from peer pressure. They may yield to current trends to attract a wider audience or supporters. This pervasive phenomenon transcends ethnic boundaries, gender, and age groups. The adolescent and children demographic, however, are predominant in research and common discourse regarding peer pressure. Adolescents, particularly when grappling with identity issues, are more prone to peer pressure as they seek a sense of belonging. Studies often focus on children's ability to make independent decisions, while adolescents' exposure to peer pressure often relates to sexual intercourse and substance abuse. The impact of peer pressure can emerge from face-to-face interactions as well as digital exchanges, with social media being a significant platform for exerting pressure. The study of social networks aids understanding of the dynamics of information sharing and peer sanctioning, ranging from subtle disapproving looks to explicit threats and physical aggression. The impact of these sanctions often hinges on group expectations, actual application of sanctions, and the individual's social standing. Central figures in a network may appear more cooperative due to their position, but this can also lead to greater participation in negative behaviors in a hectically charged world of social expectations and conformity pressures. Every child was given a book with duo image sets on each page, one side displaying a group of variously sized animals and the other depicted a lone one. It was each child's task to estimate the lone animal's size, with the sampled children answering last. It was noted that often, the final child would mimic his or her peer size estimate. When allowed to share their estimates privately, however, this conformity waned, suggesting the powerful effect of physical peer presence on opinion formulating. Thus, the potential for children to influence their peers through pressure was revealed. Illustrating this, a study was carried out in a special education kindergarten class at the University of Kansas's Edna A. Hill Child Development Laboratory. The aim was to explore the use of peer mediations in moderating disruptive behaviors. In the study, children were asked to complete a series of tasks such as bathroom visits, cleanup duties, and general class behaviors. 3 children, more disruptive than the rest, were singled out. A 2-tier system was utilized for evaluation. Firstly, children that completed tasks with minimal disruption received points from their teachers. With a 3-point threshold, they could earn a prize at day's end. In the second part, peer monitors were assigned to those hitting the point threshold. The results were notable. Initially, teacher monitoring caused a decline in disruptive behavior, but the addition of peer monitors substantially lowered disruptions further, from 36, 62s, and 59 to 1, 18, and 11, respectively. Thus, even children's behaviors are subject to peer pressure, which can be harnessed for positive transformation in educational and social environments. The theme of the passage emphasizes the impact of peer pressure on adolescents, showing that while gaining social acceptance may accrue multiple opportunities and joys, these benefits are often bundled with an increased risk of engaging in harmful behaviors. This is especially true if the behaviors are approved or condoned by their social groups, such as engaging in risky actions or drug use. Research has demonstrated a significant link between popularity and peer pressure, implying that more popular children are also more receptive to their peer group's judgments, making them highly susceptible to the pressures imposed by these groups. Peer pressure experiences, however, are gender-dependent, with girls being more likely to experience pressure in areas such as clothing choices or speech patterns, reflecting the gendered set of values and priorities. Both genders are vulnerable to peer pressure, though the focus varies. For girls, it often concerns their physical appearance or fashion preferences. For boys, it usually revolves around masculine ideals such as athleticism or intellectual prowess. Yet, it appears peer pressure impacts tend to align with the prevailing societal norms. Furthermore, peer pressure's role in encouraging substance use, particularly in adolescence, is undeniable, impacting the initiation use of several substances, including alcohol and nicotine. Importantly, some influential factors such as parental supervision can act as buffers. Less supervision might make adolescents more responsive to peer coercion during experimentation phases. Adding to this, Studies have found that peer pressure could amplify the risks during unsupervised social events. Simultaneously, it can serve as a protective factor against substance use in some contexts. These findings point to a complex relationship between peer pressure and adolescent behavior. Moreover, the susceptibility to peer pressure can signal potential negative consequences, including depression, diminishing popularity, and higher rates of sexual and externalizing behaviors. Interestingly, it may also predict the tendency to use substances like alcohol and drugs. The susceptibility to peer pressure is, therefore, a potential marker of future behavioral trends. The effect peer influence plays during adolescence, particularly in relation to substance use, is a well-documented phenomenon. However, the age at which this influence starts waning was hitherto uncertain. Peer pressure to indulge in drugs or alcohol is less prevalent amongst young children and early adolescents, largely due to limited exposure and accessibility. Study by Sumter et al., utilizing the resistance to peer influence scale, demonstrated an increased resistance to peer influence as age advanced within a group of 10 to 18-year-olds. Typically, girls were found to be more resilient to peer influence than boys, particularly during mid-adolescence, AS 13-15. This could be corroborated by the statistically higher substance use rates amongst teenage boys. Amplified positive parental behaviors like social support and consistent discipline play a crucial role in bolstering girls' ability to resist peer pressure to use substances. Peer pressure in the context of alcohol use in college is motivated by a range of factors encompassing modeling, social norms, and direct alcohol offers. The latter can exert a strong or gentle pressure. Students could perceive their social standing to be at stake if they resist conforming to the behaviors of their peers. This aligns with the concept of modeling, which involves emulating peer behavior to ensure integration. This often sees students succumbing to peer pressure to enhance their attractiveness within the perceived majority. Predominant college norms like substance abuse and drinking can further exacerbate this pattern. Many students resort to the excuse of everyone is doing it to justify their drinking habits. On transitioning to college, it's not uncommon for students, especially those not living at home, to escalate their alcohol consumption as influence shifts from parents to peers, largely due to increased modeling to integrate into social setting. Strategies to prevent and intervene in substance use often employ various techniques to counteract the effects of peer pressure. One such strategy involves building resistance skills to peer influence. The established correlation between substance use and relationships with users makes these resistance skills a significant point of focus in treatment interventions. This training is designed to help individuals resist engaging in substance use while preserving their social ties. Other interventions comprise normative education approaches, interventions that inform students about the actual prevalence and acceptability of substance use, educational programs increasing awareness of potential substance use risks, alcohol awareness training, and classroom behavior. Management. The efficacy of these approaches, however, continues to be a subject of debate and research. Research has shown that due to decision-making training, autistic children have displayed excellent and enhanced risk perception and decision-making skills as compared to non-autistic children in a control group. Training sessions focused on teaching these children how to identify risk from peers and react accordingly proved to be highly beneficial and effective. The role of parental attitudes in influencing adolescent behavior and its impact on preventing unplanned pregnancies was also acknowledged. In a study conducted in Cape Town, South Africa, at 4 secondary schools, it was observed that peer pressure led to unhealthy practices like condom derision, ridiculing abstinence, and multiple sexual partners, especially among males. Communication with adults was identified as a potential solution for such problems, but was found to be severely lacking in adolescent social groups. A survey in 2011 focused on the influence of peer pressure on sexual activities among us. Born in Mexico. Born Mexican youths. The study concluded that born Mexican youths were more susceptible to peer pressure than their Mexico-born counterparts, with the latter group having stronger familial bonds and thus more likely to converse with family than friends. A literature review by Bongard et al. Identified 3 types of peer norms influencing sexual behavior: descriptive norms, observed behaviors, injunctive norms, attitudes towards behaviors, and direct peer pressure. While descriptive and injunctive norms are more subtle, direct peer pressure involves encouragement by peers to engage in sexual activity. These norms contribute significantly to adolescent decision-making regarding sexual behavior. This passage mostly explores the significant role the brain plays in social perception and decision-making. In particular, it underscores the influential parts of two key neural regions, the medial prefrontal cortex, empathy, and the striatum, in regard to assessing the worth and social significance of actions. One study, carried out by Mason et al., used FRI scans to delve deeper into this topic. It showed that understanding the social value of an object or action took combined data from both the MPC and the striatum. The same study also suggested that without the functioning of these two regions, it would be challenging to interpret the value of socially influenced actions. Another similar research by Stalin, Smits, and Sanfrey reaffirmed the role of the striatum. Their studies showed that people were more likely to align with in-group decisions as compared to those made by the out-group. This was due to the striatum correlating social acceptance with a positive reward. Furthermore, participants' level of trust in their in-group correlated with the activity in the posterior superior temporal sulcus, ESTS, which is connected to perspective taking. The write-up also explores how risk-taking behavior tends to spike during adolescence. Researchers set up a driving simulation test to study this intriguing behavior among teenage males. The experiment found those who engaged in risky maneuvers in the presence of their peers, but were more cautious alone, showed increased brain activity in the social cognitive and social affective brain systems. The MPC, right temporal parietal junction, and the posterior cingulate cortex were involved in interpreting what others might be thinking, while another part of the brain tied social acceptance of actions to reward. This study also revealed that social rejection or social pain was linked to activity in the anterior insula in the subgenual anterior cingulate cortex, amplifying the emotional pain felt from group rebuff. The struggle to balance personal values with group standards often leads to an internal strife, a self-rejection countered through an identity shift. This process aids in harmonizing both external and internal conflict ensuing from societal pressures, thereby forging a refreshed identity reflecting the group's standard. Social media, in today's digital world, presents a colossal platform fortifying such peer pressure. While research validates the benefits of social network interaction, including advanced socialization, dissemination of ideas, and heightened self-confidence, it simultaneously warns against its adverse effects. These comprise advertisement pressures, exposure to unsuitable conduct or conversations, and misinformation, set among various age groups and business sectors. These digital pressures manifest in various forms, including a compulsion to maintain around-the-clock online presence or to adhere to unrealistic perfection. The societal pressures equally seep into the dynamics of youth, adults, and business environments, triggering a need to conform within the vast expanse of online dialogues. As per a 2014 survey representing 789 respondents aged 13, 17, 39 were pressured to gear their content towards eliciting likes and comments, while 40 posted content merely to impress others. Counterparts' online persona becomes a template for the youth who strive to replicate them, subsequently leading to undue decisions fostered by a fear of missing out. Consequently, it's not surprising that social media influences, even if they seem minor, often spearhead changes in real-world traits including identity, confidence, and habits. Additionally, decisions regarding product purchase are also influenced by the recommendations of online social network circles, and these effects extend to subscriptions. A gift subscription from a fellow group member will be more welcome than from a stranger, indicating the influence of social circles in decisions. Over 3 billion people worldwide are swaying to the rhythm of multiple social platforms, which varies in type, frequency, and level of influence. For instance, research indicates China's consumer market greatly relies on social media influence for their purchasing decisions. By comparison, countries with lower social media usage or cultural disregard for these platforms witness limited influence from digital peer pressure. It is clear that digital peer pressure is a phenomenon that is present across the globe, albeit with varying impacts. Further research is required to truly assess its far-reaching scope and effect. The central theme of the story addresses group responsibility and truths as interpreted by Christopher Browning and Daniel Goldhagen. Browning, the author of Ordinary Men, Reserve Police Battalion 101, based his work on the experiences of Reserve Police Battalion 101, comprised of ordinary working-class men pulled from their usual life in Hamburg into duty they were unprepared for. Their first task was the brutal extermination of women, children, and the elderly in the Josval Jewish ghetto. After these distressing duties were done, the men drowned their guilt in alcohol. Browning introduced his theory at the end of his book, attributing the behavior of the 101st Battalion to authoritarian and peer pressures. He argued that no soldier or police officer was forcefully dragged into participating in the gruesome tasks. They had the choice to opt out without any severe consequences other than additional responsibilities and minor belittlement. The authoritarian pressure was primarily linked to the Hitler-led Nazi government. According to Browning, another driving force was peer pressure, where the men were avoiding appearing as less masculine or cowardly in front of their colleagues. Some men preferred to kill once and quit, rather than being seen as instant cowards. Those who chose to carry out the executions were referred to as real men. Those who refused had to bear the guilt of leaving their comrades to take up their share of the burden, and so they participated in the heinous acts out of fear and obligation. Shifting to Goldhagen's perspective, he disagrees with Browning's theory and has opted to express his argument in his own book, Hitler's Willing Executioners, which sparked significant controversy upon release. According to Goldhagen, a deep-rooted German anti-Semitic standpoint is responsible for these atrocities, proposing a culture of eliminationism. This eliminationist mentality was evident in the soldiers taking pictures of the deceased, conducting Jew hunts, death marches, and generally fostering hatred, aspects that Goldhagen emphasizes in his book. In the Polish town of Gniezdow, a police battalion executed over a dozen senior citizens in response to the killing of a German law enforcement officer, raising questions about whether German antagonism was solely towards Jews. Ruth Bettina Byrne, a German-Canadian historian working with Volker Ries, scrutinized Goldhagen's evidence from Ludwigsburg and found it to be variable and on occasion selective, suggesting a flaw in his approach. Holocaust scholar Konrad Quiet also critiqued Goldhagen's intense focus on German anti-Semitism, suggesting it blinded him to other factors, including the fact that killers from other nationalities were often given the dirty work of slaughtering women, children, and the Nazi cause. In 1994, the Rwandan genocide occurred with violence between the Hutu and Tutsi tribes. While the primary aggressors were the Hutu, not all members were in favor of killing Tutsi. A survivor named Mechtilde itemized the Hutus' behavior during the genocide as consisting of 10 assistance, 30 force, 20 reluctance, and 40 willingness. According to Professor Bhavnani, behavior within the genocide was regulated by in-group policing, a system of rewards and punishments within the group. Negative consequences like property damage, sexual assault, imprisonment, and death awaited those who resisted. The role of neighborhoods and family structures was analyzed in a study by McDoom using a sample community of 3,426 in the village of Terre during the genocide. The study discovered that physical proximity encourages social interaction and influence, leading to an increased likelihood of participation in violence. This suggests that social influence was a major factor in participation in genocide. The story here revolves around the societal and political challenges that existed in Rwanda prior to the genocide. Strong cultural values instilled a deep respect for authority and a fear of nonconformity. These values were heightened in the years leading up to the genocide, with strict societal and political expectations imposed on citizens. For instance, peasants were given precise guidelines for farming, and penalties were enforced for any lack of adherence. These factors aided in the quick escalation of the conflict. Significantly, underlying ethnic tensions existed due to disputes over land distribution and the dipping prices of Rwanda's main export, coffee. These issues converged with an already volatile history of conflict. The instatement of the Second Republic under Habyarimana saw an immediate purge of Tutsis in power, justification provided through racism that maintained the majority Hutu in governmental power. This made the Hutu community familiar with racism against their own peers prior to the outbreak of war. The Rwandan division was consolidated over hundreds of years, with King Kigeli Ive, a Tutsi, centralizing power in the 1800s during the time of Belgian colonization. Belgians amplified the concept of race, favoring Tutsi men to lead societal structures. The educational system also propagated these divisions, encouraged by strong instructional leaders, instigating new academic programs and curricula. This led to a system of peer pressure, applying further accountability pressure on the teachers. Peer pressure was found to be highly effective, even more so than individual door-to-door visits and telephone calls in influencing voting behavior. Two studies, one on the 2006 Michigan households and the other on the 2012 Wisconsin gubernatorial election, further highlighted the extent of peer pressure's influence on voting habits. The latter found social pressure to have a statistically significant, albeit weaker effect, particularly on low-propensity voters. These findings suggest how societal norms and fears of judgment might shape community behavior. This brings us to a conflict of interests. Nonprofit entities stand to gain more by targeting clusters of people, like friends or social circles. Yet, such a move could heighten the discomfort of potential donors, thus adversely affecting their inclination to donate in the future in the corporate world. Studies have unearthed a similar trend. Leaders and administrators of large-scale firms observe the charitable contributions of analogous enterprises in their sector or locality to decide their company's donation-level. Companies that donate less might be perceived as miserly, and this could potentially tarnish their professional image.